Yeah. So yeah, without further ado, we can let's jump into this. So hey Rasmus, how's it going?
It's going all right. It's going all right. How are you, man?
Pretty good, pretty good. So I just want to
How
welcome
angry are
everyone
you?
to how what?
How angry are you? I'm pretty angry
Uh,
personally.
are you angry?
Like
Okay.
looking over this list of people, it's
I mean, to me, I think like this is actually a really watershed moment because I mean, never before in American history has so much ideological background-based representation like gender, race, sexual orientation, like never have we seen such representation. And also simultaneously, while we've had such representation, never have we seen such like rigid and almost homogenous ideological representation. So it's just so beautiful to see people from all different backgrounds and all different walks of life thinking exactly the same way. And that's just like an amazing thing because it really shows the diversity of not of opinions, of course, because we don't care about that, but just of people's backgrounds. And that's really all that matters.
and I love how genocide and labor repression and oppression and the war machine it sees no color, it sees no gender, it's just for everybody, and everybody has a chance to be a part of that machine. It's something that I really truly appreciate, and I think you do too, right?
Absolutely, and there's actually some beautiful things that we can kind of learn from these moves because as much as we like to joke about them, like they actually are incredibly effective in terms of kind of
Propaganda.
like signaling to the public that what we're doing is like we actually care and we want to project that we're progressive and moving in a better direction or that we value people from different walks of life when the reality is actually we value people who think a very specific and narrow way. And yeah, but that's not, of course, that's not highlighted. It's completely projected out of the conversation.
And then another thing I'm really happy about is that George Soros really is in control again. I in the research for this episode, I was watching Carl Stocker. What's it called? Is it
Mm.
Tucker Carlson?
Tucker Carlson, yeah, good guy.
Yeah, a brilliant show. Talking about
Brilliant.
how I think it's Jake Sullivan had like deep connections with George Soros. So that's also
Yeah.
something I'm feeling quite, as a leftist, I feel just at peace now, and kind of
Well,
more calm.
yeah, exactly. And the thing is, as we know, George Soros is like the only person with money that influences democratic politics. So
Truly.
like it only makes sense to focus in almost entirely on him because then if you actually talked about everyone else that was doing it, because if you talk about all those other people, they're not actually really doing anything. They're just like sitting in the wind waiting for George Soros to give his orders because he's the only billionaire who's actually manipulating democratic politics. And I just think it's so important that people understand that, especially people on the right, because when people like point the finger at George Soros about how he's a corrupt billionaire that manipulates the political system for his own gain, they're completely correct. And then they're even more correct. Well, that's actually true. But then where they really miss the mark is they think that he's like kind of the like they funnel all of the corruption into him, but there's so much other corruption that gets left out of the conversation.
When you say corruption, I assume that you really mean that the Biden's administration's picks connection to BlackRock's or the tech industry, Silicon Valley, Apple, and so on, and the military-industrial complex. Those are kind of platonic relationships, and they don't actually influence the politics. They're just friends or previous employers, and they have no connection to what kind of policies that's going to be presented or imposed. Because it is only Soros, right? That's what you mean,
Yeah.
right?
And also it's just like really important to understand that when we talk about these kind of people, right, like it's like everyone has to earn a living. So it's like, can we fault these people for making millions of dollars working for defense contractors to secure contracts with privileged information that they had while they're in the public sector to essentially get rich? I mean, can we really blame them for doing that? That's just called being a private citizen.
I think there was like a famous tweet roaming around where it was they participated in society, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the
What a
line. It
crime!
was yeah, it was from I think the guy was a reporter at Vox. I think his name was Gabriel or something like this. And yeah, it was exactly that. It was like there were multiple people saying that like, wow, the horrors this person participated in society. This is how it always goes. Like every time someone, like for example, when Hillary Clinton was taking all those speech, like getting all that money from speeches from Wall Street, everyone was like, oh, like yeah, well, she was just participating in society,
He's
like she
being
was a
an
private citizen.
entrepreneur.
Yeah, she was a private citizen. I mean, like her words are worth so much money that it only makes sense that, like someone like her would get paid $400,000 or how 250,000 or however much she was getting paid for 1 hour speeches directly to banking executives, who is the primary audience for any rational speech.
Anyways, let's get into this mess, and
Okay.
maybe we can start with Ron Klain, who's going to be the White House chief of staff and longtime Biden lover, I would say. I mean, they go back way back, and also famous from the Ebola task force under Obama. So obviously, as many articles point out, when you search his name, he is very capable of handling this current time, considering we are in the middle of a pandemic. So obviously he is super qualified, and he is the perfect candidate for Biden to choose. Wouldn't you agree? I
couldn't agree more. And you know, as a loyal you know, Obama associate, you know, he was integral in overseeing the stimulus package that Obama helped give to the richest members of our economy, and was a great advocate for the corporate state, and while it was facing its recovery from the Great Recession, which it recovered in spades.
Yeah, I think besides that, another thing that's really important to mention with him, and yeah, maybe we should also really emphasize how sarcastic we're being in all of this, because people might actually think we're serious, but maybe then they're also kind of a lost cause. He's also one, I wouldn't call him a co-author, but like co-developer of like the crime bill in 1994, and was one of the key strategists who, I was reading an article about how he also was very instrumental in convincing Clinton that, you know, there was severe political gain from, you know, really upping the Republicans when it came to being tough on crime, and really pushed the Democratic Party in like an even more tough on crime direction. And, you know, he's one of those key players responsible for potentially one of the most deadly policies ever made in the US. I mean, there's many more deadly than this one, but this is definitely one of the worst policies ever created in the US, I would say, the crime bill. So he's definitely you know, being rewarded for that kind of performance in this pick. I don't know. I always love, when we talk about the crime bill, I always love this graph of like how the U.S. prison population has developed, and you can just see a very nice little bend on the curve when it comes to 1994.
Kind of weird how that happened, like all of a sudden.
Sorry?
It's kind of weird how that happened all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's funny how there's like a correlation somehow, maybe. I don't know. It seems a little bit suspicious, right? Let's see if I can share this. This one. You see this beauty?
Yep, this is the one. There we go.
That's rising, it starts rising, and then from 1994.
Looks like it really really went up quite a bit. I mean, Reagan did his part, and then the crime bill really secured that the retention of exponential growth. Yeah,
I mean, the first bump is surely like Republicans really being, you know, the right wingers they are, but then once, you know, both parties really started backing it, you really see how effective they can be when they really come together, blue and red, and really, you know, as Biden really emphasizes, you know, they meet in the middle, they go back to normalcy, and they, you know, kind of unite America around. I was listening to some kind of like Morning Joe show where they were talking about how the Biden picks, they are like the rational middle. This is really, I think, a great example of what the rational middle and the rational center can accomplish when it really sets its mind to it. Sets its mind to it. It's like beautiful to see how they can, you know, really create the biggest prison population in the fucking world, which, you know, especially comparing to like a country like China, which has a population that's like 5 times or something like the US, you still manage to have a bigger prison population. I think that's just beautiful, honestly. Yeah, anyways, let's get back to wait.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it's funny that, despite having, 5% of the world's population, roughly, we have 25% of the world's prison population. And I was doing a little bit of research on this,
Okay.
and this will be for a future episode, but there's actually quite some interesting data. Some of it's old, from like the 90s and whatnot, but it really highlights, it shows actually, kind of how, like American gangs are structured and kind of like where their revenues come from. So like some of these like gang lords that have been, arrested, that keep books for themselves, of course, because internal accounting is actually really important for maintaining your business. And gangs are effectively businesses, they're like black market businesses that have their own structure, hierarchy, etc. Um, we see that actually the majority of revenue from these gangs, is from drug sales. And yeah, I've only done, seen a few papers so far, but like from all the data that I've seen, it is quite apparent that, when we look at the way we've structured, this kind of war on drugs, I mean, we can all acknowledge that the war actually has been won, and the winner has been drugs. Drugs have been a decisive winner in the war on drugs, and
Yeah.
and the policies that we've implemented to deal with, the public health issue of drug abuse have led to, a wider, concern for public development in a lot of regions, specifically, African American communities that, have been gutted of, large portions of their population. So yeah, just to wrap up on that, but yeah.
Yeah, so all in all, Ron Klein, a horrible choice, horrible person, really should not be in any. I mean, lastly, we can also mention that he has he has a background also, like when he's not been in office, talking about the revolving door, where you like go into public office, then go out to private industry, corporate world, and then go back to, and kind of this lobbyist issue. Like he has a lot of tech money and has received a lot of tech money, and he has really, strong ties to the tech industry, and also worked with, like top tech executives and so on. And yeah, I guess that's, one of the, if we talk about like, who is this real constituent of the new edition of Democratic Biden Party, I really think one of the pillars of that is the tech industry, right? Silicon Valley, and Ron Klein is like a great example of that. And then the whole thing you were into about, like the war on drugs, we're definitely going to do an episode on that, and it's going to be really interesting. And Ron Klein is like definitely a part of that story, and the crime bill is definitely also a part of that story, and a horrific part of that story. Let's end on that note, and just say, like, on a rate, should we rate them, like have like a rating system, like, from 1 to 5 stars on how horrible they are?
Yeah. Or maybe we could do like a school, like an American school report card, to stick with the American theme for this episode, and give them like an
Okay,
A
sure.
through an F. And
Can you go through the
I don't
scale?
know.
What is it?
Have you heard of it? It's like A through F. Like A plus is like you did the best. A minus
Yeah,
is pretty
sure.
good. B, C, D, F. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
Um,
sure.
it's like C is like a passing grade.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything below that is like quite unacceptable.
And is it an
So
ironic scale where A plus is how horrible they are, or F is?
so I think we should do it, two ways, right? One that aligns, like one for how well they align with the Democratic Party establishment, and then one for how they align with the Democratic Party voters, right? So just to kind of highlight and of course, like, we're not going to pull up every piece of public opinion data, but just kind of like, how the disconnect, exists between what actually the party chooses to do, and then what the constituents of the party actually want. So Ron Klain would be an A plus. I mean, he is, he is like the archetype of a Democratic establishment figure. And then,
Sure, he's been
from
under
a
Clinton, Obama and Biden.
Yeah, exactly. He's gone through the entire door, and he's been in the private sector, and then used his public sector knowledge to benefit the private sector, then gone back to the public sector. He's the Democratic establishment's wet dream. But then from a public perspective, I would say he's like probably like a D minus. I mean, the reason why is because there are worse figures. But in terms of actually representing public interest, he's not really known for doing anything as far as I'm aware. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the small pluses on him is that, you know, the pretend progressive part of the Democratic Party, they feel he somewhat listens to them. I think I read somewhere. I think it was what's the guy, the DC borough chief of the Interstate, Ryan Grimm. Yeah, he said that about him. So that's something.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like these concepts, it's like a lot of like, because it was kind of the same way people voted for Joe Biden, right? Like a lot of people thought that Joe Biden was like Scranton Joe and all this kind of stuff, but in the reality, I mean, could be everything but that, you know, like he has no representation of people.
Let's move on to Janet Yellen. Do I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Who's going to be the Treasury Secretary?
So and she was the former chairwoman of the Federal Reserve under the Obama administration. Yeah.
So I can start by, I don't have so much to say about her. Like, she seems like a pretty, at least in the establishment, she seemed like a non-controversial pick. She kind of got some bonus in the, what is it called, like the establishment Democratic Party media when Trump was very much against her. So that was great for her publicity. And from what I've seen, she seems not like super pro austerity. So that's something at least. Like she would support like stimuli packages and so on. But yeah, I think you have a more critical outlook on her and her role in the 2008-9 financial crisis, right?
Yeah, so when it comes to the role of the Federal Reserve in terms of dealing with issues of fiscal and monetary policy. Yes.
What was her role in relation to that? Could you read?
She was the chairwoman of the Federal Reserve, so she was the head. So when it comes to the Federal Reserve, they are largely a pipeline to corporate America. That's actually a big part of their function when it comes to like issuing, like creating money and determining policy. So it's not to say that she doesn't have any power to do anything good, but it's just to say that the way she structured her policy around the relief after the 2008 crisis was very heavily formatted to benefit the corporate state, and she posed little resistance to a lot of the demands of some of these key players, especially the banks, after they were engaged in felony criminal activity. And I think it's quite interesting now, because when she's talking now, she's using a lot of progressive rhetoric. She's saying a lot of things about how we need to, especially with this current crisis that's going on right now, she's saying a lot of things relating to like helping and assisting working people, but a lot of this rhetoric was non-existent. Of course, she was in a different position back then, but she definitely didn't use any of her power and authority to kind of restructure the way, and she did have quite some power to do that, to restructure the way the bailout was done in order to actually benefit the population, for example, the many millions that lost their homes and whatnot.
So my question would be, how much of that is her not standing up to the power, and how much is that her own like lack of intention to do that? Because she was also under the nail of the Obama administration, which was like chosen by Citigroup and like super right. Wall Street dependent, right?
Right. So the Federal Reserve is an independent body. Like the
to
president
some degree,
doesn't to some degree. That's a very, very important point. But it's just to say that the president can't give, President Obama couldn't give Jenny Yellen a direct order to direct policy. So a lot of what she did was by her own agency, and some of what, and when it comes to like saying like, okay, how much could she have done to benefit people? There were definitely quite some things that she could have done that she didn't do. And so when you say like, what does it look like as a percentage? It's more like when it came to doing what she could, she didn't have the initiative. She didn't take the initiative to do what she could. So it's like, I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't really know how to put that as a percentage, but at the same time, it's just, it's like just a general lack of will to actually initiate.
We define her as like a light corporatist.
No, she would be like it's hard to say with these people because rhetoric it really is kind of BS, right? Like when people say like, oh yeah, we gotta help people and make sure people are helped, like I'll believe it when I see it, right? So as far as I know,
Obama said the same thing, Clinton too, right? So
yeah, exactly.
That's
He'll
useless.
put on the other shoe and walk with the teachers when the teachers are striking, right? All a bunch of garbage. So as far as her record, she is quite a corporatist, but she's dropping some rhetoric to suggest that she wants to go in a different direction than Biden, but believe when I see it, right? And not going to hold my breath either.
Yeah. Anyways,
before we move on to Blinken, and I think we should actually pair Antony Blinken with Michelle Flournoy. Yeah, exactly. But before we get onto that, I actually want to bring in a few other names. So this is regarding climate change. So there's this.
John Kerry?
Yeah, before we even get to John Kerry, we should do John Kerry actually, maybe after these guys. So there's this individual. His name is Cedric Richmond. This is the Biden campaign's national co-chair, and he has one of the most pro-industry voting records on fossil fuel issues among congressional Democrats. But the good thing is he's Black, like me, so clearly he represents everything I care about naturally because I'm pretty sure we think exactly the same. He's
That's
voted
what all
to
Black people do, right?
As we do. So it's good that you put someone up that's Black because then they actually represent the interests of like collectively Black people, which of course don't think differently about things and aren't just like a group of people that have a wide degree of perspectives and opinions and experiences. Like it's just good that you picked a Black person to represent all Black people because that's totally the thought and the reason behind it. So he's voted to expand production of oil and natural gas. In 2015, he was one of 28 House Democrats, I believe, to vote in favor of approving construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. And last year, he voted in favor of legislation that would undermine the environmental review process for gas pipelines by stating that all pipelines that transport, I think, 0.14 billion cubic feet per day or less should be immediately approved, basically eliminating regulations that would actually undergo a standard review process that would determine whether or not certain pipelines could be approved or not. Instead, he just said if they're not transporting a certain amount, then they don't need any formal approval. And then the Marathon Petroleum and ExxonMobil refineries in Richmond district are located along the banks of the Mississippi River. Downstream from these plants are a number of chemical company facilities, and the region is actually known as Cancer Alley because for decades it's experienced much higher rates of cancer and other diseases than the rest of the United States. And Richmond is a member of this like group called the New Democratic Coalition. It's like considered a moderate coalition, and he somehow third way kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. And his environmental rating is like I can't remember the group that does these ratings, but he gets a worse rating than many Republicans.
This is also the person that Aaron Brockovich have been talking about, right?
Is it? Maybe maybe so. Cause she was on Useful Idiots talking about clean water. I can't remember though. Like I think I was half awake when I was listening to it. But yeah. Maybe so. Maybe it could have been him.
I think so. What was his name?
And then Cedric Richmond.
No, I don't think it's the same one, but okay. He is super problematic.
Yeah. And then there's another woman, Heather Zakal. This is a climate advisor, and she's a board member of a gas company called Cheniere Energy. which has also one of Biden's fundraisers is a co-founder of a national gas company called Western LNG, and his super PAC, which of course he has a super PAC, has former gas lobbyists on its board as well. So it's very clear that Biden is taking this whole green dream, as Nancy Pelosi puts it, very seriously. And just like all the fairy tales and unicorns that Hillary Clinton promised us, I really think that the Biden's approach on climate change is going to yield some very serious results, because they just have the people that really know how. They have the people that really were the architects of the problem. So I think they're the best picks to
They
kind
know
of
how to
figure
fix
out.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you were the one who made the bomb, you probably know how to build a building again, right?
And if you have received millions of dollars for creating the problem, then you are also probably very interested in, dismantling that institution that continues to give you millions of dollars to continue to create the problem, right?
Yeah.
I think the person I was talking about is Michael McCabe, who is a former communication strategist at DuPont, and the chemical company that's like also responsible for like large amounts of cancers in certain, I think it's in Michigan, but I don't remember exactly where. But I think actually across America. And he's also a part of the, the Environmental Protection Agency kind of transition team of Biden's transition team. So, but I think both of those are transition teams, right? So should we get back to if we want to continue on the whole climate shalong? And
we can get to John Kerry.
Into John Kerry, and just for your notice, somehow I actually deleted Michelle Flourney. Flourney previously, so name. I just added her again.
No worries.
So she's right under Blinken now. Let's get to the wonderful, lovely man of John Kerry.
So much good. So he has such a long record, and this is so much good to say. I mean, from literally talking about celebrating the advance of ISIS on Syria's capital.
He is the climate czar. Don't you fucking dare say anything else.
Never mind. I think he's a father, right? He's a father, right? So he's not a minority or of any sort, but he is a father, and we have to respect that someone with children is willing to kill other people's children. And I think that's just like shows really courage and conviction, because he doesn't take having children for granted. Because some people they get soft when they have kids and they think, okay, what if it was my kid? But he's not burdened or bogged down by any of these like just meaningless and trivial moral considerations. And I think that's really powerful.
And the idea that John Kerry, who has spent like his entire career like having a record like the pro fracking, pro oil industry, somehow is going to turn out to be, and like pro Saudi, like super pro Saudi, is going to turn out to be some kind of like, I love the term, climate czar, like the special presidential envoy for climate change.
But isn't Saudi the leader of renewable energies? Like, isn't it like where they make all their money is from renewable energy? I'm sorry. What is their primary industry that they make money?
Maybe you're right, actually. No, it's so fucking absurd. It makes no fucking sense. And he's written, I think, like in preparation, and I love this. Like, this is so Democratic Party. He posted like one article in the Guardian talking about like CO2 emissions, like kind of like selling system. What is it called? What the fuck is it called? Like,
what are you talking about? Sequestration?
No, he made like one article in the Guardian, I think, about like how do we solve climate change a couple of like weeks ago, and now he's like suddenly the climate fucking genie. It's
and was his solution just like market solutions?
Yeah.
Like
Exactly. Something like that.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to remember he was also a part of the Paris Agreement, right? And he was the UN
yeah, but I think the Paris Agreement went a little too far when it came to addressing climate change. Like a lot of people like really acknowledge that there's just, especially with the fact that it just has no teeth at all. I think it's just like, I
think actually the implementation area was where it was really celebrated, because it had such a strong system of implementation that
exactly, and
there's no way for anybody to just not give a fuck about it.
Yeah, because it has really sharp teeth that will bite you actually if you defy any of the mandates in the Paris Climate Agreement. And even if you live up to all of the mandates in the Paris Climate Agreement, most people would argue that that's way too far, and it's just way too much of an economic burden to deal with this kind of trivial problem that people are calling climate change or global warming, as some of these crazy scientists like to say.
Yeah, and it's very interesting how we're seeing almost all countries really feel. I know it's too far also to go, but all countries really fulfilling their needs when it comes to the Paris Climate Agreement. And I really think we just anything relating to climate, we should just blame Trump because he went out of that agreement. So it's good that John Kerry is here to save the day and not spend his political energy on killing brown kids and fostering more war, but actually really sticking it to the climate guards or whatever. I don't fucking know. He's so fucking absurd.
Yeah.
How that man is like, and also like he fucking after his time in office, like he went to fucking Bank of America. That's where he's been working until now.
Yeah,
Like
naturally, he's a private citizen. He can do whatever he wants. I mean,
participating in society.
He's participating in society. Don't you forget it.
Yeah. Okay, he's existing. Okay.
Yeah.
I have nothing good to say about John Kerry. I think that he is probably not going to do anything for the climate.
He would be the kind of guy where he would also be an A he'd be an A minus for the establishment because
what
he
do you
wasn't.
mean?
No, because he wasn't popular enough to win the presidency. Like, and he got so he was kind of and the thing is, maybe I'll be a little inconsistent here. So maybe that's not even a truly good.
He's an A plus. What are you talking about? It's like Clinton
he's a true A
plus.
He's a true A plus because then I would have to say the same thing about Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton's 100% an A plus. So
exactly.
Yeah. So we'll give him an A plus. And in terms of representing people, he's like, if there was there's no F minus, but if we could give him one, he would get one, right? I mean, John Kerry is one of the most despicable people on the planet. From speaking out to Congress, talking about how Saudi would pay for the entire war in Yemen if America was willing to send their boots on the ground and do the whole thing, but then he flip-flopped on that like 20 times.
And he blames the fucking whole thing on the Houthis, and he says that Saudis are doing their best to
defend themselves.
So
no. I'll actually get into that in a little bit. So not specifically with Kerry, but with Blinken regarding the Yemen war, because he was actually.
Let's save it for then the beautiful Secretary of State, which is Anthony Blinken.
So I have a few quick bullet points if you want me to run those down real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So in 2011. He supported the war that destroyed Libya and
slavery.
Alongside the first Black president of the United States, helped reintroduce slavery to a nation that had long dismissed the idea. And he also defended Israel's massacres in Gaza, specifically in 2014, Operation Protective Edge. He was a key architect of the catastrophic war in Yemen. We'll get a little bit more on that later. He works at he was working previously at a private equity firm, which we'll also get into a little bit later. He was a strong proponent for the Iraq War. And one of the key, this guy, he was at the center of a lot of these things. He was the key architect in arming Al-Qaeda, also known as the moderate rebels in Syria, and defends Al-Qaeda to this day in Idlib, also now rebranded as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. He was a proponent of the CIA coup in Ukraine. He's a champion, and he's a champion of NATO expansionism. I think actually we should kind of combine Blinken and Flournoy just because of their joint venture.
They're
we can kind of we can go back and forth between them just because they have such a closely connected past leading into.
And we should say that Michel Flournoy is looking to be the nominee for the defense secretary.
Yes.
Though it might also be there's two other candidates I think that are on the rep right now, which is equally as horrible and like equally
Yeah.
as much a part of the military industrial complex. So let's talk about her. But whatever we say about her also applies to whoever actually is going to get the nomination.
Yeah. So
clear about that.
Exactly. And when we say when it applies, they won't work. Some of them will actually have worked for the exact same firms, but not always the exact same firm. But they will have this like the theme is very consistent, right? You have person who worked in the public sector, then used their power from the public sector to benefit the private sector with privileged information, to then expand the incentives and the money that goes into private sector engagement, specifically relating to the military. What is this now?
So I'm just gonna. They have worked
Lockheed, Boeing, Raytheon,
with in one of these organizations. Let me just put it like that.
So that's a good way to put it. Actually, I didn't know Leonardo. I didn't even know Italy had a top 10 weapons manufacturer. That's impressive.
That's actually amazing.
Yeah.
Good for them.
This French one, Almaz Atni. There's a German one that I thought would be higher up actually. Airbus is EU one. Yeah. Ryan.
German is down here.
Yeah, this one down here. I didn't realize they were such a small company. And then there's Elbit, Israel's one. And you go way down, number 29. No, is that the first Russian one is number 21. It's number 29. So and that's how we know Russia is the biggest threat, a military threat to the European Union, even though like multiple European nations have defense firms and that have more revenue. Saab of Sweden, 2.6 billion. That's impressive.
Yeah, and Russian electronics, number 45. No Danish, sadly.
Yeah, where's the Danish one? There's two Indian ones down at 37 and 36.
Japanese.
Okay, this is pretty interesting. Mitsubishi has their defense contractor. Kawasaki, that's interesting. They also have defense. I love the Russian ones where they just have like very straight up names. Like in America, they call it like Honeywell and like Textron. But in Russia, Russian helicopters, high precision systems, tactical missile corporation. Like it's like they don't waste their time like with any of these like names that kind of hide what they're doing.
Russian efficiency.
Yeah, they're like, yes, we make weapons to kill you.
Yes,
we will bomb you indiscriminately. Because I mean, the Russian war doctrine is quite horrific. So it's like just because I criticize Russiagate and this idea of thinking that Russia is the biggest threat. I mean, because these things are all BS. But I mean, the Russian military doctrine is none to be a defender or proponent of.
Wait, so you're not paid by RT, like Russian television or whatever they're called?
No. Unfortunately, I'm not Putin's buddy. I worked so hard to get into his inner circle. I've tried many times to get to the heart of the Kremlin, but every time I get thwarted by the nesting dolls, the dolls within the dolls, and unfortunately, I just never make it there.
All right, let's Anthony Blinken and Michel Flournoy.
Yeah. So Anthony Blinken, alongside Michel Flournoy, joined a high-profile roster of former policymakers for the private equity firm Pine Island Capital Partners. And this was actually a firm that was incorporated by an individual named John Thain. John Thain is an investment banker that during the financial crisis tanked Merrill Lynch and sold it to Bank of America. And while he was doing this, he paid himself bonuses all throughout the process. And at the height of the subprime, what's that?
As you do,
As you do. And at the height of the subprime crisis, he spent 1.2 million remodeling his office, which included. Yes, the 35. Yes, this was the highlight, the climax, the $35,000 golden toilet. So this isn't naturally a great partner for public servants, but as long as you're full of shit, you might as well have the world's most expensive place to put it, right? So Blinken and Flournoy's firm told executives that they would share their passion for helping new companies navigate the complex bureaucracy of winning Pentagon contracts. Imagine, when you're a kid and you're in school, right? Like, what do you want to be? I want to be an astronaut. Oh, I want to be a doctor.
Oh, goodness.
For Michelle Flournoy, she's the type of person where their parents wouldn't get her a pet because they're afraid of what they would do to the animals, right? You know, when you have your passion,
A psychopath?
of being a psychopath and getting contracts to, you know, murder people. And just to go into some specifics, some of their clients include the Israeli artificial intelligence company Windward, with surveillance software that tracks ships in real time. And a former staff for the IDF serves on his board, and former CIA director, as the famous guy David Petraeus, is also an investor. They also have a partnership with Google's in-house think tank, Jigsaw. And in 2000, so this is the thing about Blinken, right? So in 2015, Obama dispatched Antony Blinken to tell Mohammed bin Salman that the U.S. supported Saudi Arabia's, quote, right to defend itself in Yemen. And
especially against journalists, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they've been doing quite spectacularly well at that. They've really dismembered the problem. So 4 years later, the U.S. Through its arms sales, netted Raytheon over $3 billion, specifically in bomb sales to Saudi Arabia. And at one point, many former officials joined progressive advocates in urging an end to the weapon sales. But Michelle Flournoy, just to go with Michelle Flournoy, she persuaded the group that an outright ban on arms sales to Saudi Arabia would not be a good idea. I wonder why she would say that. I can't. It's hard to see, you know, where the conflict of interest is in her past, but you know, there it is. And then, but since Antony Blinken isn't a person of color, he's being touted as a new dad, and that's just really powerful. And I just think we need to understand that, like, we can't I mean, if you criticize them, then you're criticizing new fathers everywhere. And what do you hate parents or something? Like, I mean, I can't think of a single reason.
I think it was also Antony that I think a quote from him, and now I'm paraphrasing, so I should be careful.
Yeah.
Is that the U.S. should never criticize Israel. So it's just, I love how, you know, especially like Danish media and like international media were all up in arms when Trump, you know, made Jerusalem, like they moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem and all this kind of stuff, and declared it like the Israeli capital and blah blah. And I'm just gonna say, like, that's not gonna change. And like, this guy supports it 100%. He is super pro-Israel. And then just to Michelle, I think it's really sexist of you, quite frankly, that you would kind of go against and criticize what potentially could be like the first female defense secretary. So even though she's white, I really think we need to just take gender as a serious category and identity, and I think just forget about whatever horrible things she's done in her past and just really support her election. So that's all I have to say about her.
Yeah, I mean, when you look up in the sky and you see a high precision missile coming towards your family, the only thing you think of is, I just hope the person that ordered this strike had a vagina. I mean, that's really your key concern at the moment. Yeah. And I just think when we talk about an open society and humanistic values, I mean, I think these are the things that we really look forward to, because we can all be murderers, right? Like traditionally, men played the role of mass murderers throughout history, and I think it's time that we open up that space to allow, you know, women, and specifically women of color, to kind of fill those roles, because yeah, we just want to get
female genocide now.
Female advocates of genocide, yeah. So with Michelle Flournoy, she also supported the war in Iraq and also the war in Libya. She actually was instrumental in crafting the troop surge in Afghanistan, and she criticized Obama on Syria, not because he armed jihadists, but actually because he wasn't hawkish enough, because he didn't do enough to depose the Assad government. She served as Obama's Undersecretary of Defense for Policy from 2009 to 2012. And since leaving office, she spent several years in consulting, and as their senior advisor, Boston Consulting Group's, while Michelle Flournoy was at the organization, their defense contracts grew from 1.6 million to 32 million US dollars in 2016. And before Flournoy joined, according to public records, the Boston Consulting Group had not signed any contracts with the Defense Department. So, I mean, it's just very clear that they just got really, really good at learning how to work with the very, very highly accountable defense industry. And it wasn't because they had privileged information and privileged connections. And after her time at BCG, she became the CEO of the Center for New American Security. Weird name, but you know, they like those weird names. And it was a think tank that had an annual budget of $9 million, and defense contractors donated at least $3 million of those dollars while she was the CEO. She was considered to, she considered an offer to serve as deputy to Trump's first Secretary of Defense, genocidal murderer Jim Mattis, and she ultimately withdrew from the vetting process to stay in consulting. And she was quoted by saying, "That's more a labor of love. Building bridges between Silicon Valley and the U.S. government is really, really important." That's a direct quote, and that's not paraphrasing. That's a direct quote.
So
she also
all of this
previously
critique that you're posing here, and especially when it relates to, like, you mentioned how both of them have such an instrumental role in like Obama's invasion of Libya. I'm just gonna give a quote here, and then I'll also see. I think maybe you can guess who made this quote, and it's also a person we're gonna talk about later. Is you know, the U.S., they really have a giant deficit, and you know, countries like Libya, they have a lot of oil. So most like Americans, they would choose not to engage in the world because of this deficit. But you know, if the US really wants to continue to engage in the world, then you know, having rich countries, oil countries, partially pay us back for that, that doesn't seem like a crazy thing, you know. So I'm just gonna put that out there, and we can save that for.
Okay, yeah, we will definitely revisit that quote because I think I think it's actually funny because I mean the quote is ridiculous on more layers than just like at its face.
Worse than Trump.
Yeah, I mean, really. Well, on the same level, because Trump talked about Libya. He, I think when he was talking about Libya, he was like, yeah, they said they wanted to go in and take the oil, or maybe it was Iraq. I can't remember. He's like, yeah, they said they wanted to go and take the oil, and he was like, yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea. It sounded pretty smart. I was supportive of that. It could have been Libya. It could have been Iraq. I don't remember. But he's opined on Libya in quite some interesting ways himself. But not to let him off the hook.
I think we should just engage with the Democratic Party. Maybe that's the solution.
There you go.
So, okay, let's move on to Secretary of Homeland Security. Unless, I mean, I think we can talk about Antony Blinken and Michelle Flournoy for a long time, and maybe we should just grade them also. Maybe separately, or maybe together.
It's just insane how like I'm like not even going into like big detail, but like there's just so many different like individual specific and like very deep aspects of corruption that would be like any one of these by themselves, like to list them, it's almost like doing it a disservice because each one of these would warrant like its own litigation and would be uniquely disqualifying and just frankly should be scandalous in and of itself. But since this kind of hyper corruption is so normalized, you can create a list and then like you can just talk about it like it's just another day.
But I think it's an important point to emphasize that these two picks, especially, they are the perfect picks for the Biden administration because they are military industrial complex plus Silicon Valley. Yeah. So they check 2 of the 3 boxes that is needed to be part of the Biden administration.
Yeah, these guys,
Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and then the military industrial complex.
Yeah. So these guys, and they're also they're not like quote unquote controversial figures. Like they're not in the public spotlight, which is super important. So these guys, in my view, would both get an A++ for serving the establishment, and then they would get an F-. I would put 10 minuses if you were a kid in Yemen or Syria, but
just not
or Libya.
Great.
But definitely if you're an American and just a regular F-. Oh, and I'm
getting
just gonna give
bumped
you
by them is probably less fun.
Yeah,
just
probably.
having them bump for your country.
Yeah, exactly. There's just two quick things more on Flournoy, and I promise I'll leave her alone. She also served on the Pentagon's Defense Policy Board, the President's Intelligence Advisory Board, and the CIA Director's External Advisory Board. Each of these positions gives members access to that sensitive information that she used to attract her corporate clients alongside Blinken. And she also joined the board of Booz Allen Hamilton, which was one of the defense contractors on that beautiful list that you pulled up, in October 2018, and has signed 61 contracts with the Department of Defense since. So
did you mention that she's a woman though?
Yeah, that's really nice actually.
Yeah, good.
And
I'm happy.
before we go down to Alejandro Mayorkas, so actually I have two people I would like to add as well. There's a woman named Jennifer Psaki, I believe, who is the White House press secretary, and
I actually deleted her because I thought it wasn't as relevant and we had low time. But we can talk about her. I think maybe we should just actually.
I just have a quote about.
Sure, go ahead. Okay.
So and then there's also Kate Bedingfield, the communications director, and there was a quote from Lebanese journalist Rania Khalek. She said, "Really excited Biden is hiring an all-star team of girl bosses to prevent universal health care and communicate to the press why corporate pro-war policies that make people miserable are super great. I might not be able to afford medicine, but I feel empowered as a woman." So I think it's I just thought she put it very beautifully, because I mean when it comes to female empowerment, I mean dying.
But are they both white though?
Sorry, no. I don't actually don't know what their ethnicities are, but whatever they may be, I mean they do represent like really strong like girl boss energy, and nothing represents girl boss energy more than telling other women that life-saving medicine is not for you.
Maybe Clinton. Hillary, maybe. But that's the only one.
Yeah.
Or Michelle, you know.
Or Michelle, yeah.
I was actually thinking we should just before we get to Homeland Security and so on, we could talk about Jake Sullivan and Avril Haines, because then we're kind of in foreign policy still. Since we
good idea.
dug a little bit deeper with Blinken and Floney.
Yeah.
So National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, WizKid, genius boy. The Clintons' son, like, I don't know. Do you wanna? He is also just like another of these like ghouls of like Clinton administration, and I think he's super tied to the Clintons, and he's also just been instrumental in a lot of the wars that Blinken was also, and is super hawkish. And yeah, I don't know, like it gets a little bit tiring, like repeating the same old things, but he's just a part of the same establishment that Blinken and Floney is.
Exactly, like he helped. I think I don't know if it was WikiLeaks that exposed this, but he helped expose how. Or sorry, he was exposed as a middleman in where the UAE was working with U.S. media to push pro-Saudi propaganda under the Obama administration. And like a lot of these guys like that we're talking about, they don't have like big public profiles, but what makes them so sinister is that they shift the nature of what we talk about. So it's like anytime you go to a cafe and you talk about a topic that's quote unquote in the news, these guys are some of these guys are just and of course women are instrumental in kind of shaping the structure of what our conversations turn out to be, right? And I'll get a little bit more into that a little bit later, but at first we should just run down some of these wonderful people that we have left.
Yeah, I mean, just another note on Jake is that like he is like a super established figure as well as Blinken and Floney, like in the national security and like pro US militarism bloc of the Democratic Party. Like he is very much like the next person we're going to talk about, and kind of as a segue, like Avril Haines.
She is horrible.
And they were also both part of like the group of people's like advising and working with Obama in developing the kill list, and you know the reinstatement of slavery in Libya, and you know, taking that down regime and like fucking ruining the country even more. So he's just another one of war hawks in this administration, and is going to be probably super great at increasing bombing of brown kids.
So just to read a quote, so if you want to move on to Haines.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, Haynes was an outspoken supporter of President Trump's controversial nomination of Gina Haspel to serve as CIA director. While not
Obviously.
commenting on Haspel's record, she praised her knowledge of the agency and intelligence, a position held by the White House, and promoted as it promoted Haspel's confirmation. Haspel was reportedly involved in the operations of the CIA's secret black site torture sites in 2002 and 2003. She has admitted to her role in helping destroy videotapes of torture by CIA investigators.
Yeah.
So it's just like really important that we support, like as especially like progressives, we support women that support other women to torture innocent people, well, largely many innocent people. And yeah, I just think that's like kind of this new vision of feminism that like we need to really take into account, because I mean, many of the people that are getting tortured are men, and we know men are bad. So it's actually really good that like this kind of programs are going on.
In many ways, it's like really fighting patriarchy. So I think that's great as well.
Yeah, I think this is actually kind of like what like people really envision by dismantling power structures. They just imagined it by just like kidnapping innocent people, taking them to black sites, no due process, and then torturing them. I think that's kind of like what the next logical extension of like egalitarian values like had in store, actually.
So if we want to add on top of that, like on top of the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, we also have Director of National Intelligence, which is Avril Haines, which was like one of the people who were very jittery about implementing the kill list. And as you said,
Yes.
also like defending Gina Haspel and torture of innocent people in many cases, and torture of not innocent people. And in general, like just an all in all strong lady boss that really, really just undermines how pro-war and hawkish. And I love the quote by, let me see if I should actually pull this up. America is back. It just undermines how fucking, I want to find this quote. How absurdly militarily based this new administration is going to be, and how deeply rooted it's going to be in U.S. interventions in other countries.
Yeah, which is really important, because when we get to near tendon later, we'll definitely bring up some of that stuff as well. I have quite a bit to say about that. So if you want to move on.
Yeah. So now I think we covered most of the. Do you want to talk about Linda Thomas Greenfield?
Yeah, and do you want to also talk about
yeah, we can start with him.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I can just say that I think we covered most of the foreign policy elements, and just a general note on that is that it looks absolutely horrifying, and I would not want to live in the Middle East or Africa considering this administration. I think it's going to be much worse than it was under Trump, honestly. I know Bolton and stuff like that is super, super horrific as well, but these guys are not much off Bolton, I would say. And Mattis and so on.
I actually have quite some to say about lovely Linda Thomas Greenfield, who is an African-American woman. So by default, she's like clearly like representing brown people throughout the world in like the best way possible. And she is a very strong ally of former U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice, who also pushed for war in Libya, supported the invasion of Iraq, and was also involved in the decision to remove peacekeepers from the United Nations, which enabled the Rwandan genocide.
I think she's also the founder of Rich Black Americans Lives Matter, right?
Yeah, I think that was the name of the formal name of the organization that they wanted to project, because that's all that really matters anyway. And then she also, as a developer and manager of U.S. policy for Sub-Saharan Africa, she cheered on President George W. Bush's Millennium Challenge account, which was like a neo-colonialist policy designed to privilege U.S. corporations and facilitate the economic exploitation of emerging African economies. So just like you said,
I still remember riding like driving in a car on George W. Bush road in, I think it was in Ghana actually. It might have been Georgia. That's a different country completely, but I don't know. It's just and the Bush's influence in Africa is horrific, especially if you go a little bit back in time as well, to his dear mother. But we should also just mention that Linda Thomas Greenfield is chosen as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. So that's just
United Nations. Yes. Yeah.
For context.
And she was also part of the Albright Stonebridge Group, a consulting firm that was chaired by killing 500,000 kids was worth it. Former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. That lobbies specifically for the defense industry, and their client list has included the management firm of vulture capitalist GOP mega donor Paul Singer. And then like just for example, when Beltway insiders teamed up to destroy Argentina's economy during the country's debt crisis, the then president accused Albright of threatening to fund her opponents unless she ceded to her demand. So basically, they use their corporate power to essentially interfere in the affairs of other nations to benefit U.S. corporations and corporate interests.
That's beautiful.
Which is really important.
I don't really have a lot. I don't know so much about Linda Thomas Greenfield, but I think the one thing I can say is that she is quite clearly a part of the like long tradition of U.S. Diplomacy and peacekeeping in the world.
Exactly.
And she's definitely been instrumental in designing the peaceful transition of power that the US have implemented all over the world to more pro-US regimes. And yeah, it's great to get back to normal, I think, and the rational center. I think that's good.
Yeah, finally we can breathe again.
Yeah. I think we should probably talk about Alejandro Majorcas.
Oh yeah,
Spanish.
Yeah.
My Spanish since high school is questionable, but he's Cuban, right?
Maybe.
I think he's Cuban American.
I believe so.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, I think he is, but I'm not sure, but he's definitely Hispanic, and that's super important because he's going to, of course, do his best to represent the interests of like all Hispanic people. Yeah, he's Cuban. He's Cuban.
So yeah, I had two things that I saw as like scary elements. I mean, you could say overall point, he was a part of the majestic machine that Obama created to deport as many people as possible, and completely, destroyed Trump's record. I think that's also a point that cannot be re-emphasized enough, is how, even per day in office, Obama managed to deport way more Mexican rapists than and killers, and some of them are good people, Mexicans, than Trump actually did, and was much more effective at actually creating a wall than Trump was. So he was a part of that, but he also, I was reading an article about how he was a part of the quieting of a whistleblower in ICE that was basically really horrified to see how I think especially ICE was using solitary confinement to detain migrants. Solitary confinement, if you're not really into it, it's a form of torture where you basically isolate a person between 21 to 23 and a half hours a day, sometimes 24. And basically you make them in many cases mentally ill. And it's really a very, very problematic form of imprisonment that, all human rights organizations and even like UN committees against torture, they define it as torture. So there was a whistleblower who was really outraged about how ICE was using solitary confinement to detain migrants, and Alejandro was, of course, a part of quieting down that concern and going against that and maintaining the status quo and the torture of migrants and the asylum seekers. And then he also had a case, a very unfortunate case, where he accidentally kind of showed again like the true face of the Democratic Party and what their real constituent is, which is rich people, as he was in relation to a case where he was developing a type of green card where you could pay the U.S. government like $500,000 and then you could get a green card because you're rich.
It's because you're starting a business. You're creating opportunities in the U.S. economy.
Oh yeah, baby. So I'm assuming he's gonna continue to help rich Mexicans and then solitary confine, normal people from, Mexicans. Let's be serious. It's primarily like South American refugees and migrants, right? That end up on the U.S. border, but unless they have 500,000, I'm probably not gonna think that Alejandro is gonna be very meaningful Secretary of Homeland Security. What do you think?
Based on some of the interests you described, if you're rich, he's actually gonna be great. Of course, if you're poor and suffering under the boot of crushing neoliberal policies, then yeah, of course he's gonna be not your friend. But why not just be poor then? Why are people poor? And just don't be poor.
Yeah, and I guess there's two types of refugees. There's the refugees that move to your country because they're looking for a tax haven and they are looking to grow their businesses and just happen to have $500,000 in their bank. And then there's kind of refugee that have to flee their hometown because violent gangs are murdering people in the streets at levels compared to like real war zones, or there's no food because of sanctions or whatever. Like you have to move you have to flee your hometown and try to find another place to move. And I guess he just chooses to support the first kind of refugee rather than the second part. So yeah, I guess that's fair enough. Do we have anything else to say about Alejandro? And then we should also go back and rate Sullivan and Haynes, and then go back to
we can definitely give.
And then
we've been a little sloppy with the ratings, but for the most part, these people, I think the only one I'm actually going to take like a lower rating on is Neera Tanden. The rest of them they're quite good in the sense that they don't have public profiles and they're super pro-establishment in terms of all their policies, and then they're also very much against like the common good.
Sure. So I think Jake Sullivan A+, Avril Haines maybe A+, maybe A.
Yeah, she's an A+ for sure. She's an A+ for sure.
Yeah, I think Sullivan too. He's also like he is the Clinton establishment. And then Alejandro, I don't know him. I don't know his history that well, but I think he was also in the Obama administration, so he's maybe an A, something like that.
Yeah, we'll give him a courtesy A. We'll give him a courtesy A.
And then in
Linda's
terms of
an A+, working closely with Susan Rice.
Sure.
And, yeah, definitely for sure.
I love Susan Rice's the title of her book. I think it's so beautiful. Do you know what the title is?
No.
Tough Love.
Tough. Okay. Definitely one to pick up from the hot off the shelves. Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't bought your Obama,
oh my God! It's
everywhere I go, there's fucking
I see
Obama.
Book. Ugh.
And I just keep walking around with matches, and like it's very tempting. But again, I don't think I can afford his like 500 pages book. So
I feel like Rasmus Paludan actually like came up with quite an inspiring model though. Like I don't think we'd attract so much of a following, but if we did like a book burning of Obama's book.
Let's do that. I'm serious. No. Let's do that. That's coming up in another episode. Burning of Obama's book.
It'd be so funny to do it like in like Norvest or something, and people think we're like these like crazy like right-wing people, and then we'll be like no, it's Obama's book, and then we're like what?
I'm serious. Let's actually do that.
Okay. I'm done.
And also, I loved the segment of Usual Idiots, and if anybody haven't watched that, they should definitely go watch it, where they read up Obama quotes about how, you know, he had to kill brown teenagers.
Oh yeah, those are we should definitely so we'll do something. We'll like we can't. I don't think we can do one podcast on Obama. This is too much. But I definitely think we should definitely like break up Obama's presidency and legacy and then the aspects of people in his administration
We
and
need to
people
talk about Obama because he is such a fucking god in the Danish media,
yeah. I
and
actually
nobody fucking understands how horrific he was.
yeah. I have one thing that I want to put in for Obama, but I'll save it for when we start talking about near tandon.
Yeah, let's move on to Steve
Steve Ricchetti.
Ricchetti.
Yeah. So according to Open Secrets, he was a lobbyist for Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is
Great organization. It's like the Red
great
Cross, right?
organization. Well, they provide health insurance, and their business. So meaning that like whenever they can deny you care, they actually make more money, and that's a good thing. And then he also worked for a company called Allied Corporation, which works on behalf of the aerospace, automotive, and the oil and gas industries. So and then he started his own firm called Ricchetti Incorporated or Ricchetti and Associates, I believe, to do lobbying for other corporate interests that focus a lot largely on pharmaceuticals and oil and gas and whatnot. So I mean, he's a key figure in this revolving door concept and a very good person.
Exactly the sentence I had in my head.
Yes, exactly.
He's the perfect example of that.
Yeah. So I don't think we need to focus so much on him because I mean he's just a horrible, disgusting person, and like he really is just more of the same. And he's also not very well known. He's in like this like another part of like the unspoken blob that gets away with all the bad things that happen, but you don't know them for it. So like they don't have like a public name, which is what makes them so effective too, which is also really good.
Yeah, and then the only sad thing is that they have to live in poverty and unknown. As I mean, I think Steve is a very good example of that. How you definitely don't get super rich by playing the role of the big pharma lobbyist and big health insurance lobbyist. It's just it's a heartbreaking job that, like Michel Flornay, it has to be a passion project for you to really do it, because you're just not going to get super rich doing it, right? So I think that's great. Let's do a little drum whirl thing.
I think we should save her for last. Actually, I think we should go through these other names.
Let's save her.
Let's go through these other names like quickly, and then we'll give her like some special some special consideration.
Yeah, I mean, let's get to that when it comes. Brian Dees and Wally Adeyemo. I'm so bad. Adeyemo. I think he's Ugandan original, like half Ugandan or something, like, at least. Brian Dees and Wally, they're both BlackRock executives. Like, I think so. First of all, I could say like Brian Rees has gotten a top White House economic advisor, especially in terms of relation to the climate, I think, and sustainability. And then Wally Adeyemo, he is Deputy Secretary of the Treasury. And basically they're both like just essential element of what's going to be the Biden's collaboration with Larry Fink and the BlackRock organization, which is the world's largest capital fund, and a horrible fucking corporation that is ruining the lives of so many people all around the world. They're really amazing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So they have their fingers in every industry you could think of, from defense, pharmaceuticals, to prison industrial complex. They manage literally trillions of dollars worth of assets. I don't even know what the word for trillion is. Yeah, oil and gas, fossil fuels. I don't even know what the word for trillion is in Danish. Actually, it's like milliard and million.
No, it's bigger than that.
No, because that's like milliard is billion is billion.
Billion,
right? Yeah. Isn't billion trillion?
No, I don't think so. I'm not really sure. It doesn't matter. They're so fucking rich that no number can actually encapsulate it. I think it's absurd. They are so fucking rich.
Yeah, the number, because like when it comes to even billions of dollars, like human beings can't really comprehend what that actually looks like in terms of like meaningful like living your life expenses. Like of course, like when it comes to like systems like healthcare and stuff like that, then of course it's meaningful. But then when it comes to like someone's like household, like for a household to have like $1 billion under its purview is just ridiculous. And then when you talk about
Dude,
a
I
trillion
love this
dollars,
comparison. Like, how long do you think it takes to count to a million if you count one
oh
number
yeah, I
every
like this
second?
one. Yeah, yeah, I like this
It's
one.
like
Yeah, yeah.
it's like 11 minutes or something,
Be,
or
because you
like
get
two
three
days. Oh,
every time you jump between thousand, million, billion, you go three orders of magnitude, or an order of magnitude is by a factor of 10, right? So it's like if I punch you one times versus I punch you 10 times, right? Punching you 10 times, of course, assuming it's the same like force, like of course it's gonna hurt like a fuck ton more. And then if I punch you 100 times, it's gonna be quite insane. You probably have like a broken limbs and something. If I punch you 1,000 times, it could kill you, right? So it's like, and then
let me just give you I have the numbers here. So if you count one number every second, then it takes you 11 days, 11 and a half day to count to a million.
yeah.
Then 1 billion, it's 31 years and like almost 32 years. 1 trillion takes you 30,000 fucking years.
Yeah.
Almost 32,000 years. It's so absurd. So our comprehension when we say these numbers is like completely off. There's no way for the human mind to actually like really truly like conceptualize what it actually means. But yeah, anyways, going back to Brian Dees, who's going to be the top White House economic advisor, he has some like climate figures who are like a little bit pro him because he has apparently like his previous job in BlackRock was like working with the sustainable investments. So, you know, maybe you can say a few good words about what he has done in that, but overall, he is going to be he's going to be a key element of the Biden administration's relationship to Wall Street and big business. And he's going to be very, very instrumental in ensuring that, you know, we're not going to get any actual serious climate reform, any serious tax changes, kind of more progressive tax systems or whatever. Like he's just kind of the new Goldman Sachs lobbyist, revolving door, fucking puppy. So yeah, and I think the same would be said about Wally Ademeo. Like he was like the second I think he was secretary or something of Larry Fink, so I remember something like. He also had a higher position in BlackRock's, and you know we could do another whole episode on BlackRock's.
Yeah, I think it would warrant.
It's a long talk, right? But especially in Denmark, they're kind of hot right now because, or they have been hot over the last couple of years because they have been in Copenhagen, at least I know, been kind of instrumental in raising housing prices because they have found kind of a smart little trick, so that if you buy up properties in Copenhagen and Denmark in general, and you restore them after you change.
I heard about this. I heard about this.
200,000 by a restoration of 200,000 crowns, then you can double the rent. And they have been making bank on this little kind of outdated element of the Danish law that hopefully the new government is going to fix. I'm actually not sure if they've done that already, but hopefully that the current government should be working on that. At least I know there's some voices in the government that are quite critical of that. But that's just one example of how they are really, you know, utilizing different market mechanisms or failures of legislation to make the city or like basically profiteer on homelessness and all kind of other issues. They are really, really problematic as an organization. And then we don't even go into like tax fraud and how they have like sustainable development and support the oil and gas industry and whatever. They're super problematic against war and so on.
I mean, BlackRock is just a key element of like the global unaccountable corporate state that affects governments in the West and the global South. And we could go on endlessly about BlackRock, but
we should do an episode on that because I feel like they are definitely going a bit undercover.
Or way more than they should. Like it's like everyone just knows like the one story. Like in Denmark, they know that story about the housing, right? Like maybe yeah, if you're in like Michigan, you might know some story about like chemical plant that they have an investment, like this kind of thing. Like, and that to me is like, unfortunately, like it just doesn't highlight the scale and the scope of like like all of the things that they do legally that are unethical, and then illegally that are, you know, criminal.
Super ethical. But I mean, they're kind of like Blackwaters in that sense, right? I mean, Blackwaters has been really been, they always remind me of Blackwater somehow. Like they are, like Blackwaters has been, which is completely other industry in some ways, but also not. They have been able to, you know, ride under the radar to some degree, but they have been exposed somewhat now, I think. But BlackRock really, you know, is such a giant player, and they receive nowhere near the same criticism as Goldman Sachs or these other big players do in the financial industry.
Blackwater, you mean Academy?
Sorry.
They've changed their name like 20 times.
Right?
Yeah.
Sure.
They're also like XE Services LLC, and I forget what else. I think yeah. But the thing is, I mean, it's weird because after the Nisour Square massacre, you'd think they would actually want to just talk about how they were like a bulwark against terrorism, because obviously all the people they killed in Nisour Square were insurgents, right?
Yeah. Also the kids.
Yeah, especially well, the kids were future terrorists and future insurgents, and that's really important.
As most
like,
brown people are, right?
Well, if they're just born in their own country, they're a threat to the troops that we have in their country that are killing them, and like recently, like Trump has
that's a legitimate concern.
Exactly, and Trump has been signaling that he wants to get out of Afghanistan, and like people have been having the most comical takes. Like there have been people that have been going on like NBC, MSNBC, and other like CNN maybe, talking about how pulling troops out of Afghanistan would endanger our troops. Like people were saying that. Yeah, was it Tammy Baldwin or what?
I don't remember her last name. Tammy something.
Tammy Baldwin, probably.
Yeah. The veteran who
Duckworth?
No,
Duckworth, right? Duckworth.
Yeah, exactly. Tammy Duckworth.
Yeah, she's a great one. I think. Yeah, so
insanity.
She knows the cost of war, so she wants to impose it on other people, and that's a powerful thing. I mean, when you understand just how much war can affect people, and then you're willing to just say,
she lost both her legs in war.
Yeah, she did. That's what I'm saying. She knows the cost of war, and she wants to make sure other people lose their legs too, and that's so important. Like that's called empathy.
No, I think the thing that you misunderstood about her quote is that she's saying that if you send them home, they're gonna come home in body bags, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
The only way to get home is through a body bag.
Yeah, they have to stay until they die. Like it's a service of martyrdom.
Yeah, it's like kind of like Hunger Games. I've never really watched that movie series, but I imagine it's kind of like that, where when we pull the troops home from Afghanistan, the only ones who gets to stay there are the ones who stay alive, and then isn't that how it works? And then the rest they're sent home in body bags.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what you ultimately want to do. I mean, if you're not like if you want to protect the troops, the best way to do that is to keep them in active war zones. I mean, when we talk about 22 people from the military killing themselves every day, it's a result of them not being in active hot war zones and having to shoot kids, right?
That's true.
Because the thing is, if
you
they
want
don't
to
have
make them veterans,
kill, they would be even more depressed. It would like they'd be like, where are all the kids that are not dead? And like then they would just go crazy. I mean,
where's the constant fucking like deep stress and trauma that's gonna keep me numb so I don't kill myself, right?
Exactly.
And then the only alternative is alcoholism or suicide or drugs, right? So interesting. Okay, I think we should wrap up this talk, because it would also be nice to get an end note. So Cecilia Rose,
let's be very quick with Cecilia Rose, and we can combine these two, because I'm actually not so familiar with both of them, but they're both people of color. Cecilia Rose and Xavier Becerra. Like I actually haven't dug up much dirt on either of them, but just my perception.
They got the title of Cecilia Rose is going to be the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, where it's going to be her role to shoot down the two progressives that are going to be sitting under her. Like there's two actual progressive economists, as far as I know, that are going to be her adversaries in the Council of Economic Advisors, and her role is kind of like to shut them down and have some rational centrist views come out of it. And then there's the Health and Human Services Department, which is Xavier's Piquera's position. Yeah, you were saying.
Yeah. So, but I think we can revisit them, like just like give them a brief segment in a future podcast if we actually learn more about them, and especially if we learn like things that show that they actually are problematic. As of right now, we don't have any dirt on them, so we're just gonna they're spared our conversational slang. But since they're picked by Biden, I mean, we are definitely going to look at them with a very critical eye. Yeah. So just to wrap up then, we are going to talk about, and you can give the drum roll if you'd like, the one, the only, the famous, the greatest, the Twitterist, Neera Tanden.
Trump's queen.
If you've been blocked on Twitter by Neera Tanden, that's a badge of honor. Like even if you're a horrible person, like it's probably she blocked a lot of Republicans too. But also yeah. So if you've been blocked by Neera Tanden on Twitter, you're doing a lot of things wrong, but at least that one thing, that's
one thing right.
Yeah, doing one thing right.
Holy fuck, dude, man.
So the reason why we're giving so much inflammatory response to Neera Tanden is obviously because she's a woman, and we don't care about anything else other than the fact that she's a woman, specifically a woman of color. Like when we have no
because we're racist and sexist.
Yeah, it's only because we're racist and sexist. Because I mean, like it would be absolutely ridiculous to talk about how she is just an inflammatory Twitter personality that's advocated for genocide, austerity, and
stealing oil, going into war because of oil.
Oh,
anti-union.
Yeah, destroying unions within our own, like in literally recent years too, like this kind of like hardcore union busting that you'd expect from like a company like Amazon, but you know, of course, Democratic Insider would be responsible for that. So before we get into Neera Tanden specifically, I just want to do a quick side note on Obama.
I also say that Neera Tanden was the person who made the quote that I came with earlier around how, and I think another element of why we're against Neera Tanden is because she engaged in society, but also because she's pro-US engagement in the world. And when we say US engagement, obviously, I think as Jimmy Dore put it, killing brown kids and, you know, stealing their natural resources. So we are against that engagement in both society and the world from the US part. So yeah, what do you want to say about Obama?
It's really funny when you like take like news articles, just real quick, when you take like news articles and like you replace the word engagement with like killing brown kids and just like read the article every time you replace that, or like replace like the economy with like rich people's yacht money or something like this. Like it's like every time you replace it, like it just makes the article look so ridiculous. But then like you kind of like, of course, like it's a little bit satirical, but like there's enough truth in it where it's like, you know, it makes it a bit like a bit more
it's 100% true. I mean, you could also replace it with like reinstating slavery, right? I mean, when we talk about Libya, which is what she was actually referring to when she was talking about engagement.
Yeah. I mean, the economy
to Libya.
The economy is somewhat connected to the real economy in the sense that like when it goes bad, working people are fucked, but then when it goes good, only rich people benefit, right? So it's like the downside actually is quite well tethered to like the reality of people. But then the upside, that's where the disconnect happens, and that's the real problem, right? It's like we don't, like everyone's like, oh, tighten your belt, but not ours, right? Like, and that's kind of
no, but even the downturn is not tethered in a way because
it also disproportionately affects, of course, yeah.
Because also like, you know, I love this the numbers of how like Amazon and other US big corporations, their profits have gone up like 100, like between 50 and 100% during the fucking pandemic, where at the same time you have like fucking like double-digit number for closures. It's like 30% or something in many countries. I know in India it's 30%. I was just talking with my girlfriend about that yesterday, actually. And it's so fucking absurd. Anyways, Neera Tanden.
Okay, so just about the quote you said earlier about Neera Tanden talking about engaging in the world by stealing their oil, like basically when it comes to a lot of these
Reclaiming their oil. Thank you.
reclaiming their oil, liberating their oil, giving the oil freedom, freeing their
Yes.
oil. Yeah. So like when it comes to like a lot of these ghouls, like Neera Tanden, Anthony Blinken, Michelle Florna, and others, you know, a lot of this policy is so nakedly awful that people in other parts of the world, specifically Europe, we're actually beginning to see through it, right? And people were starting to have like there were debates forming around these kind of engagements, right? So just to make a quick note on Obama, so there was a long forgotten CIA document from Wiki that was published by
Citigroup one,
WikiLeaks.
or
Sorry?
is it the Citigroup one?
No, this is a different one.
No.
But this one's specifically about foreign policy, but it's really interesting, right? So it basically sheds a very critical light on today's U.S. politics and wars. Yeah, so the agency knew that their best asset for selling their wars was Barack Obama, for the same reason so many people in the security state were eager to get rid of Donald Trump, right? So that reason is that Trump put an ugly face on American foreign policy. Let's go take the oil. Fuck it, take the oil, right? And then Obama was very well spoken, good smile, no scandals. So he was able to engender this kind of apathy and a tacit compliance where people just wouldn't pay attention. And Obama was the master of that, because
I love this document.
Because if you actually put these things up for debate, then it becomes a lot more complicated, right? Like you actually have to justify killing people, right? So WikiLeaks revealed a classified March 2010 CIA. It's called the Red Cell Memorandum. It was named after the secretive unit created by Bush and Cheney. By the Bush Cheney CIA director George Tenet in the wake of the 9/11 attack, and that's part of the 9/11 shock doctrine. And in the document, I think it was titled Afghanistan, Sustaining Western European Support for the NATO-led mission. Why counting on apathy might not be enough. Oh, there you go. You got it right there. Oh, okay, good. I was gonna actually just read from it.
So beautiful, this one. I love it.
It's a beautiful one. Yeah, okay.
It's so beautiful.
Good. So the fall of the Dutch government over its troop commitment to Afghanistan demonstrates the fragility of European support for the NATO-led ISAF mission. Some NATO states, notably France and Germany, have counted on public apathy about Afghanistan to increase their contribution to the mission, but indifference might turn into active hostility if spring and summer fighting results in an upsurge in military or Afghan civilian casualties, and if a Dutch-style debate spills over into other states contributing troops. The Red Cell invited a CIA expert on strategic communication and analysis following public opinion at the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence Research, the INR, to consider information approaches that might better link the Afghan mission to the priorities of French, German, and other Western European politics. Public apathy enables leaders to ignore voters, right? So the CIA literally writes, this is a quote, the public apathy enables leaders to ignore voters. So the goal of the CIA was to create apathy in Western Europe. Basically, the goal was to make Western Europeans not care about foreign policy so that Western Europe can participate without resistance to American genocidal foreign policy. And in the Netherlands, they actually had a very massive public debate regarding sending troops and funding the war in Afghanistan. And it obviously, because the debate it's quite patently it's quite evil what we're doing in Afghanistan in terms of loss of life, profiteering, no interest in doing anything meaningful to make anyone's life better other than for rich contractors and politicians. The debate it was a fear that this debate would spill over into other European countries. So the document reveals the CIA's discussion of how to manipulate public opinion to ensure it remains at least tolerant, if not supportive, of endless war, meaning Europe. Western Europe. What prompted the memo was the CIA's growing fears that the populations in Western Europe were rapidly turning against the war on terror, specifically the war on Afghanistan. And the agency concluded that its best and only asset for doing this was President Obama and his popularity in Western European cities. The problem in 2010 was that there was an increasing awareness in Western Europe of how much of an anathema the war in Afghanistan was to their values, and how wasteful the resources expended, and how little it had to do with the quality of their own lives. But thankfully, Obama's charm, good smile, and great posture managed to whisk that all away. And now we have Europe and the European population. And this is the powerful thing, right? Because European politicians aren't doing this because they're just defying the democratic mandate of their constituents. It was actually the CIA's initiative to utilize Obama as a force for complicity, not just among the governments, but among the populations worked in spades. And if you talk to anyone in Europe about foreign policy, I mean, just pick a room of 100 people and ask them what they think about foreign policy under Obama. I mean, yeah, sure, you might get some people saying, and maybe it's not the best or this or that, but they won't describe it for what it was, right? Like really a campaign of death and genocide and war crimes, right? But then when you talk about Bush, I think you would get a lot more people to agree to that.
That's exactly what's happening in Denmark. I mean,
yeah,
that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, but not just in Denmark. This is it is in Denmark.
Throughout Europe,
but all of Europe, and this is from the document. It says if some forecasts of a bloody summer in Afghanistan come to pass, passive French and German dislike of their troop presence could turn into active and politically potent hostility. The tone of previous debate suggests that a spike in French or German casualties or in Afghan civilian casualties could become a tipping point in converting passive opposition into active calls for immediate withdrawal. French and German commitments to NATO are a safeguard against precipitous departure, meaning leaving too quickly, but leaders fearing a backlash ahead of spring regional elections might become unwilling to pay a political price for increasing troop levels or extending deployments. If domestic politics forces the Dutch to depart, politicians elsewhere might cite a precedent for listening to the voters. This is their quote. If basically people in the Netherlands tell their government to stop killing their own Dutch citizens in pointless wars and also killing innocent civilians in countries that they have no reason to be in, politicians elsewhere might cite it as a precedent for listening to the voters. So the CIA, the largest proponent of creating democracy in Latin America, Central America,
in the fucking world,
Africa and Asia, literally the entire planet, and Eastern Europe, including former Yugoslavia. They, for some reason, they have a document that actually quite explicitly disparages the concept of the democratic will of the voters and how to manipulate public opinion and manipulate political classes to actually resist democratic mandates.
I mean, I think this is another episode in of itself.
I just wanted to
this goes back to our last episode, why the democratic establishment and the Republican establishment is so much for prosecuting Julian Assange and why it's so important that we fight that as a community, as we really tried to emphasize and advocate for in our last episode. So you haven't watched that one, go back and watch it now, because it's Obama's likability and his charm, because he is so fucking charming. He's a fucking rock star. Just deeply hides and camouflages these kind of tactics that are used to kill hundreds of thousands of people throughout the world. It's disgusting, honestly. Do you have more to add on this topic, or because I feel like it's also kind of a rabbit hole that we can go into?
We should just quickly wrap on Neera Tanden. I mean, like, we don't have to get into every single thing she's done, but I mean, just to give one example, she's personally assaulted. Who was it? It was when he was working for her at the time, I believe. But
I think we were working for Clinton.
Yeah, or Clinton, but what was the guy's name? I can't remember his name. She assaulted a guy that was questioning Hillary Clinton for his
A reporter.
for her support of the Iraq War.
Yeah.
And then when she was accused of punching him, she responded saying, "No, I just pushed him." So and all the accounts.
Zakir.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. So when she was accused of punching him, she responded acknowledging that she assaulted him in some way and said, "No, it wasn't a punch, it was just a push," right? But of course, this kind of like literally assault just got brushed under the rug because she's a darling to the Clinton establishment and one of the most staunch defenders of the establishment. The thing is, if for her to get confirmed, I believe she has to go in front of Bernie Sanders, who she has disparaged almost more than anyone, probably even more than Trump and the Republicans, when she claims to be a Democratic. I'm not confident she's going to be confirmed. I think it actually could be very well that she's just like this kind of person
she's up for
on the chopping block.
She's up for the position of Office of Management and Budget Directory,
yes.
which is
yes.
very, very essential. Office, I guess, in getting any policies and legislation passed, right?
Yes, and she's talking about she's talked a lot about her personal story about, I think, how her mother, I believe, relied on maybe Social Security or Medicare or both, maybe Medicaid, I can't remember, but just relied on the public sector to help her and have opportunity to like have a quote unquote better life. And then simultaneously, she's talked about cutting these same systems that have actually given her the opportunity to get where she is, right? So I mean, this is the kind of person. She's just like Tammy Duckworth, where she's like truly seen where Tammy Duckworth has seen the negative side of war. She has seen the positive side of certain social programs and how they can benefit people's lives. And Tammy Duckworth is in favor. While Tammy Duckworth is in favor of more war, killing more people, etc. Neera Tanden is in favor of cutting the same programs that had benefited her personally, which is just a beautiful irony to see.
Yeah, I think to kind of wrap up the whole thing, for me, there's starting to be painted a picture that the Biden administration is going to be consisting of three very, very essential pillars, which is one, Wall Street, primarily in the manifestation of BlackRock. It's no longer Goldman Sachs. That is, Larry Summers and all this kind of shit. Instead, it's BlackRock and Larry Fink, who is really coming in as the big player in the Biden administration. And I know that Joe Biden and Larry Fink also has a personal relationship, as far as I'm aware, or at least they politically have been courting each other. And then the second element is the tech industry, where there is also, I don't remember her name now, but there's also like a key advisor in the Biden transition team that is like a long-time Apple lobbyist. And in general, you have so many people in lower positions in the administration that has already been appointed or at least nominated that have previously have positions in Uber, Airbnb, all these different kind of Silicon Valley organizations and companies, right? So there's the Wall Street, BlackRock, financial institutions, there's Silicon Valley, and then there's the military industry, where they are also heavily represented, as we also covered already in both Blinken, Sullivan, Floney, and Haynes. And so that's kind of shaping up to be really like the coalition, if we really want to talk about true coalitions that the Democrats have to keep together, that's kind of the coalition that's forming right now for them to maintain their power structure, which is, again, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and the military industrial complex, right? And then, of course, there's some support from like different pharmaceutical companies, big pharmaceutical companies, and chemical companies in DuPont and Steve Ricchetti and so on. Like you have all these different special interests coming in, but really like the big pillars of what is really the power right now in this administration seems to be those three industries. And it's going to be Barack Obama 2.1 or 2.0. I don't see any kind of positive elements that we can bring forward as like this might be promising or this might be interesting or whatever, right?
It's really that they're doing their best to create the exact conditions that got us Donald Trump, and maybe Trump will run again in 2024, but these are the kind of worsening structural conditions and institutional conditions that will eventually lead to a worse and more competent figure. Which I mean, Biden is, and well, not Biden himself, but the administration behind Biden is that actually worse and more competent figure than Trump right now. But then if Trump comes back and wins, or if whatever comes after 8 years or 12, how long Democrats sit in power, if things keep going this way, we will actually see a worse figure come out, and more competent and more effective.
Yeah, and I mean, in many ways, in the most essential areas, they're going to continue Trump's policies. They might change them a bit. They might, do a little bit less of that, but then they do other things that are going to be more horrible, most likely than what Trump was going to do. So it's going to be, the perfect recipe, I think, as you said, to, build up a resentment and hatred in the public that perfectly can undermine somebody like Trump again. And yeah, it does not look bright, to say the least. I don't know. Do we have anything positive we can end on?
Yeah, I think right now
More good ground clips.
Well, yeah, that's super good. But I think in terms of the positives, I think what we can say is we can say like it just highlights just how important direct action is, because I mean this isn't like just a doom and gloom thing, right? We don't want to just be like, oh yeah, things suck and forever they will suck. I mean, and of course, like there's a lot of institutions and barriers for direct action, and creating a consciousness within the public to actually be willing to engage in this direct action. But I think one of the aims of this podcast is to kind of like empower people with information to say like, okay, yeah, like things are bad, but and the Democratic Party is not going to be a savior to all the bad things that happen. In fact, they're the purveyors of a lot of the bad things, just the same way the Republicans are. And there's quite some few differences between the two parties, or quite like not so many differences between the two parties. And it just highlights that we need to find another mechanism for creating change, right? And direct action being one of them. There are other solutions that are on the table, and I think we just need to look to a lot of these other options, especially in the interim periods between voting, because when people ask me who I vote for, I'm just like, how much like that's a 5-minute process, right? Like everything else between is what really is going to be affecting change, because power concedes nothing without a demand. I'm probably gonna say that every episode, and it's just like we have to just keep pushing our demands on power structures, and kind of forcing these people to follow the will of the best interests of the populations that put them in power.
Yeah, and if for the act of voting to be actually in any form of shape meaningful, you actually need some kind of democracy, which is not run primarily and entirely by big business money and military interests and so on, right? So I think that's another point to add to that element. And I think you talk about direct action, but I think the thing I take away from this podcast is just that I'm gonna really engage, and maybe take direct engagement is maybe the way forward in these kind of issues, because there is obviously a lot of money here, so and we have some deficits, so we definitely need to engage in this kind of society. I think anything else would be stupid.
Agreed.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, on that note, I think we can kind of. What's that?
It's just ridiculous, honestly. Like looking at looking at an overview of all these names, it's just I don't know what to say.
Well,
It's a fucking circus.
The thing is, for me, the way I look at it is just I just would say it's in line with expectations. I mean, I expected exactly this. So, Mr. Nothing will fundamentally change. I mean, he was proving us right. Nothing is fundamentally going to change, and he wasn't lying. So when people say like the worst things about their character, I tend to believe them, right? And this is exactly what that is. So yeah.
And I think this ended up being we talked about making this like a short episode, and I think now we talked for almost 2 hours.
It turned into a lot. Yeah.
No, but it was great, and let's end it in here. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next week to all our 5 subscribers on YouTube out there.
Later, guys.
See you guys.